Okay, here we are back at the ocean. I have a microphone. Hopefully, it will help with canceling out the people who are painting this building and the guys yelling on the beach. And if it doesn't, I'm truly sorry. We did what we can. But today, we're going to look at another lie, and this is an exhausted approval addict. When you worry about getting approval from other people all the time, you end up tired. Very. So many people don't realize at the end of the day when they're so tired, they think it's because they did so much. Half the time they're drained inside from all the people they're trying to please all the time. But before I go any further in looking at this lie, the approval addict, I need to say, I don't need to, I'm going to say, I am so grateful for my husband who comes out, gets the table ready, chair in place, because we have to maneuver where the sunlight is. He watches the clock for the right time to go out. Help. Microphone attachments. Oh my goodness, if I do this by myself, I would not be doing balcony chats. And secondly, I want to thank what we call is our bonus child, Christina, our tech wizard, who actually this is happening, all of this because of her. I would not be doing balcony chats. 57, 7, 8, 58. This is 59. Yikes. Okay. Well, the approval addict. For the first 2 weeks, we looked at the performance trap that so many people are caught up in. And I call it the first side of the little formula that Satan has to keep us trapped, constantly harassing our self-worth. And the first thing we looked at is I must meet certain standards to feel good about myself. That was the first lie. Now, this week, takes the lie a little further and assaults us a little further. This one is, I must be approved by certain others to feel good about myself. Certain others, who are those that you need approval from in order to feel good about yourself? Well, just for those who have no idea where we get this material, it's from the book, The Search for Significance by Robert McGee. We're on the second, they call it a misbelief. It's a lie. I think when it first came out years ago in the 90s, it was a misbelief. When I'd read it, I go, that's a lie. So I rather call it a lie because the father of all lies, John 8:44, he helps make sure it spreads throughout the whole world. It's not just an American thing, it's a worldwide issue. Ask yourself this question. This past week, whose opinion in your life trumped God's opinion of you? In fact, it's like their opinion is more valuable to you than God's opinion. How about this one? This question I put an unhappy face right next to it. How much of your life has been spent trying to gain the approval of a certain person and you still haven't gotten it? Ooh, talk about wasting brain cells, as my mentor Betty used to say. She's in heaven's balcony right now. I know she's like, high five me, girl. Then I started thinking, how much of the day do you spend investing holy sweat to gain the approval of certain people? That's one to think about. But before we get to this, how do we lose this? How do we end up here? How do we begin when we're born with such innocence? I've got a great illustration. In fact, when I read it, it was from Newsweek. You know how long ago that, well, it doesn't even have, I didn't even write the date. This is from the 90s when I got it. Everywhere I go, I got to read this. It's so good. Excellent. How did we get to where we are today? Look at the innocence that was lost. A group of kindergartners were asked, how many of you can draw? All hands shoot up. Okay, what do you want to, and they say, yeah, we can draw anything. What do you want us to draw? You want us to draw a dog eating a fire truck in a jungle? Sure, how big do you want it? Okay, so how many of you can sing? All hands go up. What can you sing? Anything. What if you don't know the words? Well, we'll make them up. I love that. Let's sing. Can we sing now? Then you ask the kindergartners, how many of you can dance? Unanimous. Everybody raises their hands. What kind of music? Any kind. In fact, can we dance now? Do you like to act in plays? Yes. Do you play musical instrument? Yes. Do you write poetry? Well, we're working on that because we're learning to read right now, but we'll be doing that too. I mean, just constant enthusiasm. Yes, yes, yes. This answer is yes and yes, yes, yes. All the children, yes, yes, yes. Then you ask some college students the same questions. I was blown away. Only a few of the students will raise their hands, but when asked if they could draw, dance, or sing, or paint, or act, or play an instrument, not infrequently, when they raise their hand, they have to qualify their response. They have to say, well, I only play piano. I only draw horses. I only dance to rock. I only sing in the shower. College students will tell you that they do not have talent, are not majoring in art, or have not done any of these things since ready third grade. Or worse, that they're embarrassed to even think about ever singing, dancing, or acting in front of other people. That's why there's always so much stress when people have to go on a platform, because they're so worried about what? People's approval. That's why they say the most nerve-wracking thing on earth to ever do is to speak publicly. Well, what's so nerve-wracking? It's because you're worried about what people think about you when you're speaking publicly. I know that's not your issue. Let's move on. It could be something else. We actually live in a world where people demand that we, in a sense, they demand being pleased in order to prove us. So we're constantly, breathlessly, they love us for our yes, our performance. Remember, that's last week, measuring up to certain standards. I was thinking about approval addicts, worrying about the crowd, peer pressure. Well, John the Baptist actually lost his head because of peer pressure. Now, yes, he did promise his stepdaughter. Yeah, it would have been. Not step, no, it was his daughter. Yeah. Anyways, promised her, because this dance she did, that he would give her anything up to half his kingdom. And then when she said, I want John the Baptist's head on her tray, it says he didn't want to do it, but because of the crowd. And I thought of the crowd that screamed, crucify Jesus. I thought about the crowds. The people are always worried about the crowd opinion and the mob opinion. Oh, well, the power of other people over people it's been around since the garden, where the first lie came. Well, think about this. Listen to this quote about Moses asking Aaron the question about the golden calf. I love this way he said it. What did these people do to you to make you bring such a terrible sin upon them? Like, what did they do to you, Aaron? Like, did they threaten to kill your firstborn? I mean, what did they do that causes you to exchange our glorious, incomparable God for a grass-eating cow? It's one of the idols of Egypt. Astounding. I just love that phrase. What did they do to you? So it just shows the power of people to sway our behavior, our actions, our directions, our thoughts. Ooh. So let's look at them a little closer, the approval addict, and why they're so exhausted. Let me tell you, the number one thing that approval addicts are actually addicted to is the praise of men. Oh, Matthew 23:5, when describing the religious leaders, it said everything they did was to be for the praise of men. And I find it interesting that that same group is the only group that Jesus ever spoke harshly again. The polished pretenders trying to convince people that they were perfect, that they were better than them. And people are in awe of that. And that's the group that Jesus spoke the harshest against. I love that. I think that's hilarious. People's praise is like a theater, and people are waiting to hear the claps and the cheering. And if they don't get it, then they feel like what they did wasn't legitimate, wasn't good enough. Well, what's interesting on social media, if you don't get so many likes, if you don't get, so many responses, so many comments. Somebody told me that a friend of theirs got mad at them because they didn't respond to something they posted. Seriously? You don't think people have other things to do than be on Facebook checking the likes and responses and am I loved? Am I loved? Am I loved? Let me tell you, God's love was paid. His love for us was shown with such a high price to Jesus, it being Jesus. Romans 8:32. It literally says, if he spared not his only son, how much more will he give us all things freely with him? I mean, we are so spoiled. We are, and we're worried about what people think. We worry about what people think more than what God thinks. And the irony is God's opinion of us is more accurate than people's. The only group, if we listen to this quote, this is from Search for Significance. If we base our self-worth on the approval of others, like you look around and said, how many people are clapping, who's frowning, who's rolling their eyeballs, then we are actually saying that our ability to please others is of greater worth than Christ's payment for our life. 1 Corinthians 6:19 and 20, that he sacrificed himself to choose us and make us these portable tabernacles, this temple in which he dwells. And his opinion gets trumped by what other people say about you. Okay, thank God you're mature enough. You're not there. Now, remember Satan's formula: performance. I got to meet a certain standard, and then I have to have certain people. I find it's interesting. It's certain people. What strangers think about me has never bothered me. Trust me. Well, anybody that knows me knows that's true. But there are certain people that I think, oh my goodness, what happens if they're mad at me, or they roll their eyeballs, or they look, kind of unhappy when I'm speaking? I think, oh my gosh, the woman in the front row, boy, does she look mad. And the Lord's like, don't make this about you. You glorify me, girlfriend. And half the time she's looking that bad because she had a fight with her husband before she came to hear me speak. Well, let's look at these approval addicts and some of the things that God's truth versus what people think about us. When someone says something and I go, is that true? And they're like, well, they say it's true. Well, God doesn't think that. And that's why we need to spend time with God in his word. That's where we get the instruction about how fearfully and wonderfully made we are. People who are worried about what people think are easily manipulated by others. I mean, they're scared to death to ever tell them no. In fact, you start out with a no and you're saying yes. And you think to yourself, I thought I was saying no. Now I'm saying yes. And what is interesting is Paul the Apostle, when he was going to be visited by Peter, Peter came to see these Gentiles that had come to Christ, like, wow, this is amazing. And he was enjoying fellowship with them, eating with them, until the legalistic Judaizers showed up. And they're like, so Peter, you're eating with Gentiles? And judged him on the law that they came up with. It's the Talmud. It's not the biblical law. Anyways, so he judged him, and so he decided not to eat with him anymore. And boy, Paul called him out in front of everybody, called him a hypocrite because he changed his behavior based on a group that, what was he worried about? The approval of the legalistic Judaizers. I'm sure you're not there. So just be careful if someone shuts you up because you're worried about what people think rather than what God thinks. Another thing about worrying about what people think is it hinders your witness. Many, many people do not speak up for Jesus because they're so worried about what people think. I've been in groups where I actually was in a group one time where a woman clearly who was visiting, and I was a new visitor somewhat, and you could tell she wanted Jesus, and everybody kept trying to stay on task on the study rather than address what she was saying. So I'm sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, this group is going to let her walk away not knowing Jesus. And I'm sitting there, I had to decide, I don't even really care what anybody in this group thinks. I care about her. She could die without Jesus. And I go like this, excuse me, I think she has some questions for us. Everybody looked at me like, how dare you interrupt us? But guess what? We got to lead her to Jesus that day. Stop worrying about what people think. It shuts more people up. More people worried about what people think. And I'm so glad Larry Munoz, who asked me week after week to come to the very youth group where I found Jesus, that he didn't worry about what everybody thought. And he didn't worry about that I was this popular kid that everybody liked. I won for the best smile. The teachers all loved me. He didn't worry about any of that. He knew I needed Jesus. So focus, girls and boys. All right. It hinders our witnessing. Matthew 10:32 and 33. That was one of the first verses I learned, where it says, if you're ashamed to profess me before men, then when the Father will be, Jesus will be ashamed to profess you before the Father. Look it up. Matthew 10:32 and 33. So don't. All right. Another thing, my time's running out. One more thing. We talked about this in the previous balcony chats about being controlling. We are so controlling because of our fear of rejection and failure. That's why we're controlling. We don't control our children in church because we so want them to hear the great truths. Half the time we control them because we want everybody to think I'm an amazing parent. Look how still my children sit there, like little statues. Anyways, so we're worried about what everybody else thinks. Half the time the way we decorate, set a table, some of us do it because it's a gifting and we do it out of joy. Too many of us worry about, I can't do it like them. So what? Do it like you. Paper plates. I love paper plates. So anyways, once again, we're worrying about what other people think. So we're controlling. I've seen more people lose it at events because the person who's supposed to kind of be in charge, and they got their helpers, well, a couple of the helpers didn't quite measure up, and the person comes completely unglued. You would think somebody had burned all the food. No, it was arranged different than the way she wanted it arranged. I remember thinking, life is too short. You are wasting brain cells by the second. My mentor, good old Betty, child, stop wasting brain cells. I will close with this verse and we'll come back with plenty more at the second part of this. Listen to this scripture, 1 Thessalonians 2:4. We do not aim to please men, but to please God. Listen to this, who knows us through and through. He knows us through and through and still loves us. You know why? Because he's a compassionate father who knows that on our best day, we're but dust. We're like a wind piece of, here comes a shadow, boom, gone, like a dust blowing in the wind. He knows how frail we are. And the desperate approval addict trying to prove to people, I'm worthy, I'm worthy, I'm worthy, I'm worthy, I'm worthy. I'm like, oh my goodness, you're wearing yourself out. Jesus paid for you with his life, and the price tag went up the minute I received Jesus as my Savior and Lord. I became like priced out. You can't even pay the price he paid for me. Like I said, I'm part of the favorite tribe. I'm one of his favorites because I'm a child of the King. Well, if you're one of his children, one of his kids, to as many as received him, to them he gives a right to be called children of God, even to those who believe in his name, John 1:12. Here we are, from an unshakable kingdom. Okay, so next week, we're going to look at the quiz a little. We're going to take a little couple notes from the quiz for some of you who think, I don't think this is my issue. And I don't think that performance trap was my issue either, or this approval addict. Half of the exhaustion at the end of the day, you should ponder, who was I worried about pleasing? And who can rob you of your joy through one comment? That reveals more of the approval addict lie than the person that made the unkind comment. Those are not acceptable. I get that, but they're everywhere. Okay, so next time, approval addict, the exhausted approval addict, part 2. See you again.